Hi friends, I'm Nadine Brandis, the author of Fox and the Out of Time series, and I'm also the author of Romanov, which is a historical fantasy retelling of Anastasia that I just finished and turned into my publisher. I have my cup of tea. This is actually the mug that I drank most of my tea out of while I was working on Romanov, because it holds a lot. I just wanted to sit down with you and kind of talk because I feel like on social media I'm always saying I finished Romanov, whether that's I finished the first draft, I finished and met my first deadline, I turned in my first big edits. So I'm always saying I'm finished, and it's because there are different stages of finishing a novel. Anyone who writes probably experiences this, but I just finished the line editing stage, and for me this is the stage where when I turn in my book and I send that email, my brain automatically categorizes my book as done. No more touching it, no more thinking about it, no more brainstorming. I'm allowed to move on to the next idea, or I'm allowed to breathe. I actually sign a contract at the stage I'm in right now saying that I will not be making any more substantive changes to my manuscript. Now, if some of these words like line edits and copy edits and those sorts of things are getting jumbled in your mind, I just did a video on the different types of edits in publishing, so I will link to that below for those of you who want to understand the different types of edits and different phases and what those tackle. Anyway, I just thought that I would sit and share kind of how I'm feeling now that Romanov is done. Authors feel different emotions, obviously, when they finish a book. And I know that for some authors, it's really, really hard to let go of a story because many authors are perfectionists, and many of us, because our minds are constantly going and churning and rehashing things, we can see that there are still problems. And at this point, my book is gonna go become a book now. I can't go change those things. While a book is in the writing phase, it's mine. All of the characters are mine. All of the words are mine to do with as I will. At this stage, now it's my publisher's. It's mine because I created it, but my publisher is the one making any final tweaks and sending it off to print. And then once it goes to print and goes to bookstores and goes to your hands, the story becomes yours as well. I can't change anything else. My publisher's not going to change anything else. And you get to interpret it and experience it in your own way. And that's so fun to pass that story and pass that journey on to my readers. But it's also really terrifying because I think, well, what if they read it and there's a typo and then they think that I can't write? There comes a point when you're writing a book that you do have to let it go, because the journey of being a writer and being an author is a journey of constantly growing. You will never get to where you know everything and to where you write perfectly, because it's an art form and there's always something to perfect. There's always something to learn. And so the journey of being a writer is being able to let go of stories in the stages of life that you're in and let that story go affect the world and affect your readers at the stage that it's in. So I find comfort in that, knowing that every book serves its own purpose and reaches its own readers. I do feel like Romanov, to me, is stronger writing even than Fox. I feel like Romanov came out a lot cleaner, and I think that there are readers who are going to like Romanov a lot more than Fox, and then there are people who really like Fox that maybe Romanov just isn't going to be for them, and that's okay. But enough about that. I'm excited for Romanov to go out into the world, finally. It's like the work has been taken out of my hands. Because I can no longer change anything, which has its own scariness to it, that also has a freedom to it. My publisher has taken the book away with my permission, and it's their job now. And I can be free knowing I wrote the best story that I could, and I'm allowed to move on from it now. When I turn in a book for the final edits that I've just completed, my brain has this little awakening moment. First of all, the minute I press send and send that manuscript off to my publisher, my brain's like, oh, now I'm awake and now I'm working and now I can think of all of these things that you want to change, and I have the perfect solution to every problem that you couldn't fix before. So usually my editor gets one email that's like, yay, it's done, here's the manuscript. And then the next day it's like, wait, can we just change these last final things? And I thought of the perfect wording for this thing. So I have that moment of now my brain is working again. But then also there's this shift in my mindset of now I'm free to think of other ideas. Because when I'm working on a story that is under contract, I don't let myself work on other books. I hardly let myself read other books. I'm very selective about the fiction that I read because it's very tempting to let my imagination go to all of the other stories that I want to write. Once I turned in Romanov, now my brain is like, okay, let's sift through all of these other ideas that you've had and let's figure out what you're going to write next. And in fact, the very day after my deadline, I was like, I think I want to start a new book. I think I'm going to sit down and write, but I didn't. I made myself wait, but I might get to it in the evening. I posted on Instagram a little bit of just how I was feeling letting my book go, and several of you sent me questions that you wanted to have answered kind of regarding this process. So the question that I got the most was, do you know what your next book is going to be? And that's not something that I can share now. As I'm sure you've seen, there's usually a big announcement when an author actually shares about their next book that they're writing, and that's specific to a timeline, specific to an agreement with a publisher. So right now I'm just letting my imagination breathe for a couple days, but you can rest assured I will keep you updated whenever I have something that I'm allowed to announce. I did want to answer some of those other questions from you guys. So Ruth Ann Burrell on Instagram asked, how do I go about deciding this is the idea that I want to write next? I think I'm a little unusual in that I don't have a giant pool of stories just sitting in my brain waiting to be written. I have like a tiny little bowl of them, a little mug of them, and like, oh, that one or this one or this one. Writers that I know have endless stories that they want to sift through and they want to write them all and there's just not enough time. I don't know how that feels. That's just not how my brain works. Maybe there's just not enough room in my brain for like tons and tons of story ideas. I don't know why. This is how I work. But a lot of factors come into play when I decide what I'm going to write next. A huge one is, do I have a contract? And if I have a contract that says, okay, I'm writing another book for my publisher, I have to take into account what my publisher wants as well. Generally, if I have the freedom to write whatever I want, meaning I'm off contract, I'll probably write the one that I'm most excited about writing just to get it out. You can write any book and then have that draft for whenever the publishing market says, hey, that's what we're looking for. Everything is on a cycle and everything tends to come back. So there will always be a place for your story if you're patient enough. But the things that help me decide what I'm going to write next is, what am I most excited about? And then, do I have a publisher interested and what are they looking for specifically? And do I have an idea that matches up with that? Another question that I got from my Instagram from Jules of Green Gables was, what inspired me to write Romanov? This is a whole video in and of itself, but number one, the movie Anastasia is amazing! And I love it so much. But I got to go to Russia when I was very young. I've been there several times. I have had Russians in and out of my house my entire life. The first bits of language that I ever learned other than English was Russian. And so just that culture and that country and those people and that language have been a very, very strong part of my life. So I really wanted to dig into that in story form because I love processing these beautiful things that are so important to my life through story. So that was one reason. Also, I love finding out the actual history behind things, and as much as I adore the movie Anastasia, we all know that it's not historically accurate, or if you didn't know, now you do. There is so little historical accuracy in that movie, guys! I wanted to dig into the actual history and bring that story to light that maybe we didn't know, because that story was actually lived. There were people who were involved. It was during this huge time of the Russian Revolution, and I wanted to find that story, dig through all of the mess, and bring it out for all of us to read in an actual fiction format. Okay, another question on my Instagram was from the Reading Corner for All. How many edits did Romanov go through? It tends to go through somewhere around
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Romanov, by the end, will have gone through somewhere around 8 or 9 edits. Those are all the way from the content edit all the way through the copy edit and proofread. And that took
May, June, July, August, September, October, November.
The entire process of just editing the book is somewhere around 6 to 7 months for Romanov. Other books have different editing timelines. This is just applicable to my book, Romanov. And then I love this follow-up question that she asks, was the ending of Romanov different than I had expected? I always knew these bits and pieces that had to happen in the ending, and I was so excited about the ending, so it actually kept me motivated to keep writing because I couldn't wait to get to that point to finally write these moments that I thought would be really powerful. But I rewrote completely, like delete, rewrite the ending 4 times, possibly even 5. So endings are my most difficult parts of a book to write. I always have to rewrite them. There's not a single book that I wrote that I didn't have to rewrite the ending drastically. When I finally got to the ending, when I was writing the first draft, I realized it was a lot more involved and a lot more complicated than what I had had in my head. So I got these important pieces down, but then there were all of these loose threads that I hadn't prepared myself to tie and figure out how to tie them. So it was figuring out how to tie those loose ends that really took all of the rewrites. And then the final question was from Harpley Art, and she asked, does anyone else critique or read Romanov in this stage? This is not when I give it to beta readers. So if I have the time to give my book to beta readers, I will do that either right before or during the line edit phase, because by that point all of the content is solid, and the line edit phase is my last chance to change any big things. So with Romanov, I did have a very short window when I could give it to beta readers, so I did give it to 2 of my beta readers. One of my beta readers this year, I even checked in with her and she's like, sorry, I've been in the hospital for like 5 days, but I read Romanov twice. And I was like, what? No, you need to heal. Don't worry about my book. I have incredible beta readers who give really helpful feedback when I'm looking for that outside feedback from a reader's point of view, not from an editor's point of view. But at this stage, it's too late for beta readers or just any external readers at all. So that's that. I wanted to be casual and just sat here with some tea at my bookshelf with you to talk a little bit about finishing a book. I am so happy to be done with Romanov. It's time for these characters to be read by other people. I'm ready to let it go, even with whatever flaws are in it, which everything has its own flaws and everything has its own strengths. Also, super exciting, I will be doing a Romanov cover reveal in like a week and a half. Be sure to follow me on my social medias because that is where it's going to take place. I will probably also do a cover reveal video, which I will link down in the comments when it is filmed and when it is up. And Romanov is already up for pre-order, and so I've definitely got those links below if you're excited about an Anastasia retelling and you like history and you like magic and you like them coming together in a young adult standalone crazy story. I think this book would be for you. If you have any specific questions, please ask them down below in the comments and I will be happy to answer them. And if you want to keep up on my videos about writing and publishing and all of the bookish things, please click subscribe and the little bell icon that gives you an email alert every time I post a new video. With that, tally ho!